In this video I wanted to give you a little taste of New York. If you're new to my channel, welcome, and I certainly encourage you to peruse the catalog of videos. If you've been with me for a while, you know that I've covered a lot of these cities across North America, but I have not yet covered New York. Now we're looking at footage from 1911, colorized footage from 1911. I'm going to be showing you some video from the time period that the buildings I'm going to show you were said to have been constructed in. But the reason I haven't covered New York is because of the vastness of the architecture. Same reason I haven't covered Chicago. Those two need to be really looked at and scrutinized and broken down. Even in this video here, we can see that there's no construction going on at 1911 that we can see. Looking down these two streets, you'd think you would see all sorts of high-rises with cranes hanging off. But you're looking at buildings that appear to have been standing for quite some time. And very, very vertical buildings as well. I remember 1911, so we're just getting the automobile kicking off. And there we can see the MetLife clock tower coming into view, said to have been built 1890 to 1909. Again, that was 1911, that footage, so was it a new building? 1903. What kind of madness do we have in the streets here? Complete chaos. Streets already sized for what's coming. Automobiles. Obviously the streetcars would be a big part of the layout of these buildings or of these cities. But then again, what I propose on this channel is that this was all part of an infrastructure that was inherited, and that's the reason the streets are as wide as they are. And take a look again at how vertical these structures are. 1903, all of this well intact, looking like it's not new whatsoever, and looking like the people aren't sure what to make of the place. Here we jump to the 20s. Get some of the fat cats here, and then we're going to look at some panoramic footage from the 1920s. The 20s now a very popular era for construction. A lot of high-rises going up in a very short period of time in the 20s into the 30s. And as we take a look at the automobile life taking root here in New York, in North America in general, we get again more views of the architecture, and we don't see construction. I think we should see quite a bit of evidence of construction going on here. And again, is this because it just so happens to be we're looking in an area where there wasn't any at that time? Now you could say that here we have a panoramic view. There's Singer building on the left there, torn down in 68. We'll be looking at its sister building. But again, I'm not seeing construction. And I apologize if it gets a little choppy here. Of course, the links to all these full-length videos are in the description, all to be found on YouTube. Again, we are hovering over in the 20s, and we are not seeing any. In fact, we're seeing the layout of a city that looks like it's been predetermined for quite some time. Even the buildings taking the shape of the way the streets are laid out. Looking like a very old city, even at that early time period. Of course, if you spot something that I'm not seeing, let me know the timestamp in the description. I have a lot of people that don't really understand what I'm trying to do here on this channel, accusing me of saying these buildings weren't built at all, they didn't exist, built by aliens, or something silly like that. That's not at all what I'm trying to assert here on this channel. What I'm trying to say is that the timeline of our history has been altered. And so many of these cities have been around a lot longer than we have been told. There's been technologies that we once had here that we no longer have access to. That's why I get into a lot of the robber baron activities, the taking over of oil and big industry. And I think we're seeing it here firsthand. And I think when those entities took over society, I guess you could say, for lack of a better term, they also changed what we learned and how we learned. So there's a lot to question. This is supposedly an excavation from 1903 here in New York City. We always wondered how they did it. We'll wonder no longer. We've got video footage of all the gentlemen with the shovels filling up the carts. And there's the cart hanging in the balance. Just as the horse and buggy narrative is also hanging in the balance, when we come to realize not all is what we've been told. So I've selected a handful of buildings for us to take a look at coming out of that time period. Here we just have a street scene, early New York street scene. You can see the brick pavers, cobbled, whatever you want to call them. Something we see across the realm. New York having all of that as well, of course. This is interesting too. You see this wooden framed structure out front here. This is something I would expect to see for the time period. Not so much all the architecture around it. So we begin with the Chatsworth building, Chatsworth House. Told it's built in 1904. I'm not sure if it's a multiple year. We don't get enough information on it. But I just want to highlight the style of architecture we're seeing here. And construction on this probably going on during the footage we saw earlier, the 1903 footage. This one still stands, and you can still get a great look at some of the ornamentation on this beauty. And a closer look at the top portion, you can see these statue figures holding up the structure above them. Incredible architecture, not really fitting of what we saw in the footage as far as I'm concerned. There you can see those statues, something reminding me of something we would see in Dresden or somewhere in the Bavarian region, let's say. And there's a decent look at some more of the ornamentation. Now, does this jive with the footage I showed you? Is it believable to think that these were being made at that time? Or did it look like so many of these structures had been around for quite some time? The arms, of course, taken off here at this point. Again, the armless figures and a really amazing mansard-style roof here. Curved roof, very intricate, detailed construction. 1904. Moving on to the City Investing building. 2-year wonder, this baby. It's the one in the foreground here. We can see the top of the Singer building here. Built sort of as a complex, we are told. But this one here, said to have had 32, 33 stories, depending on what area or where we're beginning from on the ground, let's say. They tore this one down in 1968. We get some examples of the ornamentation. So this would have been constructed right before that footage we saw, the colorized footage near the beginning, 1911. And one of the main tells, I think, that we're dealing with a deception is that before they tore this building down, you think they would have documented and cataloged how ornate it was as a marvel of architecture. It's not really what we see, though. Difficult to find a lot of evidence, especially of the interior of the structure. Here we have an aerial shot from an early time period. Again, I'm not seeing any construction, but I do see a lot of large buildings. We get this type of ornamentation throughout. Very detailed. Again, remember, does it seem like that this was the type of work they were doing during that time period where we saw the footage from? All of these looking like they've been around for a while. How else do you explain the architecture? So when you're falsifying history and you're shortening the timeline, it starts to become very unbelievable. And to say that this building was put together in 2 years is absolutely absurd. We have some sketches of the interior here, and I'm really not sure why you wouldn't have some professional photographers come in and photograph this and hand it down through time. The level of detail is off the charts here. Probably taken from a photograph, but all I could find was this. So if anyone can find any more visual evidence of the interior of this place, the marble columns, marble tiled walls, perfect floors, built in 2 years, 1908. Give me a break. Give me a break. And there we have the back end of it. You can see even a little dome on it, or a large dome. They tell us this is a construction. I don't know, you tell me. Is the smoke getting in the way for a reason? Well, there'll be a few construction photos in here. If I find them, I'll put them in. Maybe they were able to work miracles at that time. But that's what I would suggest we're looking at, this absolute miracle. Here's a photograph of the detail involved with this structure. And I really think the mental gymnastics comes into play when you're trying to fit this into the timeline we're given. I think it's much easier just to question the narrative, to be honest with you. This is the Dilton Apartments, built in 1900 to 1902, so just before that chaotic street scene we saw from Manhattan, they built this sucker. Yeah, even though there's madness in the streets, there's sanity in the way that they're building, apparently. This is looking like an old structure too. What do you think? Again, that curved mansard style roof, or heavily ornamented. It's really got to make you wonder what went on in the 1800s. If a deception like this, so grand, was able to be carried out, what must have gone on? What process must have gone on? But that's what we're doing here on this channel. We're questioning the narrative that we've been given because there's too many holes in the narrative. Too many holes. Again, reminding me of something you'd see on the other side of the pond. Let's say the Dilton. Look at that mansard roof. Beautiful. Amazing that they've allowed it to stay the way it was originally built as well. But you can get a sense of the age of the building as well. Even the brickwork looking very old. And one of those sort of drawing postcard. I was trying to figure out what this one is too. This building here with the. If anyone knows what that one is, can you put that in the comments as well? There's the side of the Dilton. And moving on to one of my favorites, the Helmsley building. 2-year wonder again. Streets run right through the bottom of it. And massive structure. 2 years. And they decide to put all this on top. Still stands. So we get a taste of what it looks like in our modern day. Really sticking out like a sore thumb. You could see the juxtaposition of the old world and the new world here. And we are provided with some construction photos. Again, I'm not sure what to make of that. Supposedly 1927, some sort of borderline drawing photograph going on here. You make of it what you will. It looks to me like this building is all a part of the infrastructure, and the infrastructure again was all there. You can see how this runs right through, right to the building there. The Helmsley building. And a little bit of the interior, not much. But again, very ornate. Maybe an airship dock. Who knows? Just another view of New York. Almost, again, a drawing. This almost looking like a drawing. Just give you a sense of the horse-drawn buggies and the architecture, old-looking architecture. Now, I couldn't find a name for this one. They just call it 44 West 77th, I guess. I think it was built in 07. So right between our video footage, they were putting stuff like this up in New York City. Check out the detailed ornamentation. This building still stands, but it certainly doesn't look like this. Amazing. We're looking very cathedral-like. Here's what it looks like in the modern day. Of course, they dumb it down, don't they? They dumb everything down for us. A little bit of detail down here, not much. Let's go back to... Okay, what it once looked like, and what it does look like. That even makes sense to you? Alright. 44 West 77th. Anyone have any info on that? Let me know. We're going to move on to the Municipal building. Built during the time that footage we just saw was taken. Alright, we got a 5-year timeline on this one. That's an early time period as well for this type of thing to be going up. But it would make sense with all the detail on the top. There's some nice early black and whites of this one. Horse and buggy era. I mean, what are you thinking when you're walking the streets and you're seeing these types of structures? You know, it's again that shell-shocked look of the people walking down the streets. That's all I can think of. Like, where am I? There's an early look of that Manhattan area again, and again, do we see any construction? Maybe here. Maybe. Panoramic view. This is supposedly one of the designs that they didn't accept on the construction of this. And a little taste of the interior, just a taste before we move on. That's what this video is all about. It's just a taste of New York. New York is the type of place you can dig for hours and hours and find more and more buildings like this. This one designed by William Kendall, one of the partners in McKim, Mead and White, which is a famous architectural firm, I think responsible for a lot of this old world stuff. Supposedly a construction photo here. And you can make of it what you will. Is there modifications going on? Is this really happening? Is it a legitimate construction photo? Maybe. But I don't think so. Again, one of those buildings you can drive right through. So they're giving us another one. Not complete down here. Actually looking quite off, this one. But let's get a look at it anyway. Oh, they happen to have the flag up there, looks like. Maybe. Even though the construction's not finished. And one more look at it. Before we move on to the main branch of the public library. And this one opened that same year we saw that colorized footage, apparently. And on the inside it looks like this. And before it was this, we have a construction photo here from 1903. early time period, so this would have been built all throughout that era of those videos that we saw, supposedly. But again, we didn't see any other construction during those videos. So does that mean they weren't building at the time? No, it couldn't just mean that all the video we saw just so happened to not have any construction. But again, we're seeing all these structures. We're being told these are all going up in and around that time, but we didn't see any evidence of it, so we have to take their word for it. And this looking like it's been around for quite some time. And it sounds like quite a long process of construction over that decade, that first decade of the 1900s, that this was supposedly going together. Like years going by with very little progress going on, a very slow progress. But miraculously by 1911 it ends up looking like this. Really, really perfect, I would say. There's a level of perfection here. You can see how all the stones are weaved in together. And if anyone's been in this library, please share your stories below. Beautiful. This thing could be a couple hundred years old. And you wouldn't know because it doesn't age. Not in the way that buildings of today age so quickly with the very poor building materials. Back then, like this highly sought after building materials of marbles and stones and granites. Those are the finest of the fine in our modern day. If you're building with those, there's a lot of money on the table, a lot of time, a lot of skill involved. Very difficult to envision the streets of New York as we witness them building this type of architecture. So much attention focused on the ceiling areas. There's no flat roofs here or flat ceilings here. This thing is just, it's gorgeous. And again, did not jive with the footage we saw at the beginning here. We'll move on. Coming to the end of the file, we have the Washington building, supposedly built in 1884. This one does show up in one of my books on demolished buildings. Or it doesn't. No, it doesn't. Sorry. I was considering it, but then I found out it still stands. But you'll see that it certainly does not stand and look like this building. Here's how it looks in the modern day. Right here on the corner. Actually, I'm pretty sure I found enough of these heavily modified structures I could do 101 of those in a book too. They're everywhere. And that's very early time period, 1884. This one going up. The Washington building. Very, very interesting. Upper area especially. Again, falling into that air travel narrative. I think that there was an entire mode of travel that was taken away from us at that early time period. Of course, the Hindenburg disaster being the catalyst for that. And the last building in this collection is the Woolworth building. November 1910 to July 1912. How many months is that? Is it about 20 months? Not even? To build this? At that time period where we saw how chaotic the streets were. So this one designed by Cass Gilbert. You can look into Cass Gilbert and find all sorts of old world wonders under that gentleman's name. Apparently a 30-story lower section and a 30-story upper section for a total of 60 stories on this sucker. Again, less than 2 years to build, and 1910 to 1912. And it still stands, and it's spectacular. And I mean, you could say, if you found a cathedral in Germany and they told you it was built in the 1200s and it looked like this, we'd say that makes sense. But this is a high-rise in New York City, built in 1911 in less than 20 months. The Woolworth building. We have construction photos, of course we do. We have a very clean and crisp photo here. Until we get to this little area here, what's going on? There's this construction. Is there some funny business going on? You tell me. Here we get a nice double view of some of these old world wonders. Municipal building and the Woolworth building. It really is an amazing structure, isn't it? To think that this was standing and horse and buggies were in the streets down below. And I get a nice look again at the old world and the new. Construction photo for you. Is it legit? From 1910? No, or 1911, 1912? Somewhere in there. What do you think? What are we to believe our eyes? Are we not to believe what we're told? Beautiful. The Woolworth building. So this has been just like I said, just a taste of New York, and what to expect when you look a little bit closer at the narrative. So I encourage you all to question the narrative, continue questioning the narrative. Don't believe what they tell you, and fall in love with the old world. Thanks for watching.